You don't get to show up at the Georgia State Patrol at 1 o'clock in the morning with a group of 50 or 60 people dressed in all black, throw fireworks in through the windows, vandalizing it, damaging it, creating a fire, causing 2 Georgia State troopers to have to go to the hospital for smoke inhalation and be labeled as a protest. I've got news for you. The reason that you protest is to draw attention to a campaign, to something that you want, to an injustice. When you do these things, you are no longer protesters. Nay, you are rioters. And Fox News is culpable in this case because amongst the articles that I read about this incident, they too continue to call them protesters. You don't get to say that you are a largely peaceful protest and only 3 or 4 bad apples in a group of 60 people went and did this. What do the rest of the protesters do? Do they just sit there? Do they applaud? Does that make you a protester? No. If I was there and I was there to protest peacefully, I would first of all try to stop the people from doing that. If they did it, I would try to jump on them. And if I was failed to do that, I would try to get the information about them because they are ruining what I'm there for. What I'm there to do is to draw positive attention to a cause. But these people are just trying to burn down and loot things. How is my reasoning incorrect? Please tell me. Leave me a comment. Let me know because I'm tired of it and I really want us to be able to, as a country, to be able to call this what they are. These are riots. They're no longer protests. What are they still protesting? What is their goal? What is their mission? In Portland right now, they are continuing to protest riot, aka. They are spray painting public buildings. They are destroying windows, knocking them out, one at a time, for 38 days or something like that. And you still want to call these protests? No. We have to be able to stop this. We have to do so forcefully at some point because this is getting out of control. The woman that lost her life at 1 o'clock in the morning after they set up the cars on the freeway. What's the driver supposed to do? Even if he got onto the freeway in an illegal manner, as long as he's going the right direction, he should be absolutely surprised by the fact that there are cars blocking the road, that these protests are allowed to happen at 1 something in the morning in Seattle on the freeway is ridiculous. These aren't protests. They're just trying to stop civilization. They're LARPing. They are trying to imagine a fun, exciting life, and they do so by making other people's lives miserable. And that's where they derive their power from internally, for themselves to be significant. In society, we absolutely need to have certainty. When people talk about dismantling the police, we are already seeing what's taken place. In St. Louis, the McCloskeys, who held their guns out to prevent, from their eyes, protesters from advancing on their house, despite the fact that they were threatened by the protesters and that the protesters had previously broken down the gate to private property, entered into the streets, both committing vandalism and trespassing, and the McCloskeys stood there with their guns peacefully. The DA is threatening the McCloskeys. And the protesters, of course, showed back up at their residence. Except this time, the McCloskeys didn't come out themselves. They had private security guards. They knew what was coming. They predicted it, so they hired private security. This is what happens. The wealthy, the elite, are going to have the protection that they need, whereas the impoverished are going to have no police protection. And if you take a look at what just happened in Chicago, just yesterday, I believe it was, there were 13 people that were shot dead, 67 shootings in Chicago. This is what happens when you don't have police presence. The de-incentive of being locked up and incarcerated is lessened, creating more crime. You get to settle your disputes with a gun. What we've done is we've put the power of violence in the hands of the state. This might be the best thing that we've ever done as people, as humanity, because you take away the incentive for retribution, which never has an end because it's an eye for an eye. Now you have the state that handles it, and overall we have a much more peaceful society. And yet you want to take out the police as a functioning government entity. You just want to destroy them, and you are going to see what's happening. It's already being exhibited, and then you're going to have an even greater divide because you have kids that are growing up on the south side of Chicago that are undoubtedly very smart and very capable of attending Ivy League schools. But when you are worried about your immediate survival, it's really hard to put your attention into your school books. It's really hard to study, to find time for that. And when the rich people have their own private security, then you have this widening gap in society between the haves and the have-nots. And this is what the police, if they function well enough, are able to distribute law enforcement across. So when you have less policing in the most vulnerable neighborhoods, that's when you get greater amounts of crime. That's when you see less success from the youth there because they're constantly concerned about their own physical well-being. Just take a look at Iraq. So many people originally celebrated the fall of Saddam Hussein, this horrendous dictator. And months later, guess what? They opined for him. They wished for the good old days because kidnappers and terrorists began to take over the nation as the security infrastructure was completely dismantled. Yes, that's partly the United States' fault under George W. Bush because they disbanded the army in that case. But nevertheless, when you have a power vacuum, it is filled by the worst elements of society normally, those who seek and demand the power. And then you have militias that are protecting you. So you want to defund the police? That's what's going to take place in America. You're going to have warlords, as you saw in the Chaz. And that is what's happened in Iraq. It's what happens whenever there's a power vacuum. It is filled. This is humanity. We are not perfect. And the United States has been the best bet, and why so many people dream of entering the United States for the opportunity, for the security that they do not have in their home countries. And as somebody who's traveled the world pretty extensively, I can definitely tell you that that's true. So we need to be able to call out these things honestly, otherwise they continue to gain power. Otherwise, if you call them riots, then many people will be less apt to participate in them. If you frame them in terms of being largely peaceful protests, well, maybe there's going to be more people that want to peacefully protest. However, these things aren't protests anymore, they're riots. And we must, for our own good, be able to call them out as such. We've got to stop, we've got to report things accurately and not from an ideological position or not wanting to piss people off. We have to be able to state the truth. If you guys like this content, please share it, like the video on YouTube, give it that thumbs up, and subscribe. I hope you guys have a peaced out day. Peace and blessings to everybody. And let's call things out accurately and honestly. Blessings.